Welcome to this short presentation on the integration of CoolCare with person-centered software. So what is an integration? Well, it's the connection of two or more systems for data transfer. CoolCare is an administration system for care homes. Person-centered software is care planning. Logically, the data that we're looking at transferring would come to CoolCare first and then be transferred through to person-centered software. The types of data we're looking at is the staff data that comes into the system either by CSV upload or by direct entry, and new resident data, again through the inquiry process and then direct entry into the system, or it could alternatively be CSV upload of new residents. This data is put into CoolCare and then can be transferred with a minimum of fuss directly into person-centered software. In this presentation, we're going to have an overview of the integration between CoolCare and person-centered software. We'll start with staff records, and we'll look at how the data is transferred, what data is transferred, the authentication field, which is a unique reference that is essential for the transfer, and to make sure that we're not creating any duplications, and any further actions you might want to take once you transfer the data into PCS. We'll do the same for the resident records, and then we'll also look at support, so where you can go for support from both of us, both PCS and CoolCare, to make sure you're getting the most out of your system. CoolCare is an integrated partner within the person-centered software ecosystem. So as we can see here, this is a typical staff record in CoolCare. In the General tab, when your system has been activated for an integration with PCS, the button on the top right-hand side appears that allows to send data to PCS. To get this activated, just contact support or contact customer success, and they will go through the process of connecting up the two systems. So by clicking this button, we're going to transfer staff records over to PCS, and it will create a brand new staff record for you automatically. The information that's going to be transferred over is the title, forename and surname, sex, date of birth, the employee start date, the email address. It will create a role, and it will also create a job. The job will be populated what we refer to as position in CoolCare. Now, the email address is extremely important in this, as it's used for authentication of the data transfer. It has to be unique. Now, logically speaking, this is going to be unique almost by default. However, if a staff record already exists in person-centered software that has the same email address already, the system will not create a new record. It will not overwrite any records. It will just simply reject that record to be created. If a staff record in PCS already has a different email address, so in other words, Andrea is already in PCS, but for some reason she's got a different email address, then it will create a new record, and that would be a duplicate. Obviously, why would we be pressing this button to transfer data if Andrea is already in there? But it is important to understand that that is how the system automatically recognizes that there either is a person already created in PCS or there is not. Here we can see in person-centered software, we've got the staff list. We have a new staff member has been created. There's Andrea. Note that the name is displayed, but the role defaults to owner. And this is simply because we don't have an owner in CoolCare, so we selected the default. The image is not transferred. That's deliberate, and that's because there's a security setting within PCS to make sure that that does not happen. And then the data that's been pre-populated is what we discussed in the previous slide. All of that has been transferred into this record without the need for re-entering this data. Clicking into the staff record, we can see that Andrea's data has been automatically transferred over. We could also choose to change the photo. You can see the job role, or I should say position as we call it in CoolCare, or job, has been transferred over. She's a senior care worker. And we can see that that's the email address. That is the unique email address that the system is recognizing as never having been put into PCS before, and therefore we can create this brand new record. Now you may want to change the role at this point, as it does automatically default to owner, and the next slide will cover how we go about doing that. So clicking into the personal information on the staff record, we can see that the system has auto pre-populated all of the information that we said it would transfer over. And you may want to go in and change the normal role within PCS using the drop-down menu and just change that over so that it displays correctly on the front page of the staff records for PCS. For residents, it's very similar. Again, once the integration has been activated, a green button appears in the resident record. You can see that on the top right. And what the information is ready to be transferred over when you press that button is title, forename, surname, sex, date of birth, the admission date, the NHS number, the NI number, and the room number. It would not transfer over any bed type if you're currently using that within CoolCare. That's not something that normally is transferred over because PCS does not have the same. Now, it's very important to note that the title, so I should say the forename, surname, and date of birth are used as the authentication method here, not email like staff, because not all residents will have an email. So that's what we're using to authenticate within PCS, and it has to be unique. Now, realistically, both first name, second name, and the date of birth are almost always 100% unique. Admissions can be forward-dated to allow data transfer pre-admission. So you could transfer the data over when you're at a certain point in the inquiry process so that within PCS you can look to do your assessments, and then you can set that forward-dated so it's all coming in future. But we can also set PCS to suspend that resident so that the staff members, the care staff, are not actually looking for the resident because they're not yet joined the home. Here we have the service user view within person-centered software. As you can see, a new service user, or as CoolCare would refer to them, a resident, has been added to the system. The image is not transferred in the same way as staffing, but we have the first name and date of birth is displayed on that screen. And of course, the data that's been populated within that record is as discussed in the previous slide. So clicking into the service user record, we can see Jill here. We've got the data is being pre-populated. You may wish to add an image at this current time. If you don't have one, obviously you wouldn't. And as the system pulls data from CoolCare's residents, it might be necessary that you've forward-dated that resident. So in other words, you've admitted the resident so that you can bring the data across ready into person-centered software so that you can do the other admission and assessment area that you might want to work on. However, it may be necessary you might want to suspend that resident because they haven't actually been admitted yet, which we'll cover in the next slide. So within the resident record, or I should say service user record as person-centered software would refer to, you can see that all the data has been pre-populated, so it's automatically filled that in, saving a great deal of time that would otherwise be required to input that data. You can set the non-active resident to suspend, which is just on this little suspend button there, which is in the file information section. Just click the tick box, and that ensures that your PCS reporting is in line with your live occupancy as it currently stands in the home. So the frequently asked questions for the person-centered software integration with CoolCare. So when do we choose to transfer the data? Well, it's entirely up to you as users of the two systems. This is not going to vary very much from your existing process, but logically, if you've got a staff member who's going to be joining in the very near future, you may want to transfer that information over to PCS. You might want to do it on the day that they start. In relation to residents, it can vary. So if you're wishing to use PCS for its assessment tools, then you may want to transfer the resident over before they become a resident and suspend them so that the record is being auto-populated and created within PCS, ready to go for when you're doing the assessment. Or alternatively, if you want to just transfer them over when they are effectively moving into the home, then you can do that also. Will data updated in CoolCare transfer to PCS at a later date? No. So this is a one-time transfer from CoolCare to PCS. Again, logically, if we remember the information that we're transferring over, it's really very unlikely to change. Names, dates of birth, those sorts of things, NI numbers, they're all something that are fixed in stone as you in perpetuity, and therefore you wouldn't normally change them. So it's a one-time transfer from CoolCare to PCS. And it does not update at a later point in time. If you do need to change it as you realize you might have made an error, it will be necessary to go into the PCS record and alter that one specific detail. Will data entered into PCS transfer into CoolCare? No, and this is very important because CoolCare is the administration system. Logically, the access to CoolCare is of a more senior nature. Administrators, deputy managers, managers, payroll, HR, finance, all of those sorts of individuals access CoolCare, which would not normally be accessing person-centered software. So logically, as this is the administration system, you don't really want people updating things in PCS that would ultimately alter the administration system. You don't want information that's being entered perhaps by a carer that could ultimately turn up in HR or could ultimately alter pay records. So that's why the answer is no, it's a one-way transfer from CoolCare to PCS. What if I make an error and there are duplicate records made? And this is a very frequently asked question. What if I do sort of make errors, and how do I correct any kind of mistakes I might make? I think the important thing is to remember, how does the authentication, so that the way the system automatically removes errors and duplicates, how does it do that for you? Well, email address is the authentication tool, and it has to be unique. So if a staff record is already in PCS with the same email address, it is not going to create a new record. And that's logical, isn't it? If you've already got somebody in the system with that email address, and that is what the system is using to recognize if they're already in PCS, then it's not going to create a new one. So you do need to make sure that the email addresses are actually unique email addresses, which 99.9 times out of 10 it is. But just be wary of any generic email addresses, admin at or anything like that. They can be shared, and therefore we just have to be careful. And really, when we're talking about the email address, we are talking about a personal email address, not any kind of company email address. So if a staff member already has a record in PCS with a different email address, the system will create a new record. Again, because it's the email address that has been keyed off to make sure this is a unique record, if the staff member is already in the system and you decide to put them into CoolCare again and press transfer, it will create a new one if the email address is different. Again, very unlikely scenario, but if any time you are transferring over you do create a duplicate record within PCS, there is a button just simply to remove that record. You have to have the correct authorization to do it, but you can just remove that out. And then, of course, with residents, well, that's a little bit more straightforward here because we've got a forename, surname, and date of birth. These are all combined together to make a unique reference number or code, if you like, which means that it's exceptionally unlikely that you're going to have somebody with the same first name, surname, and date of birth. Somebody asked me the other day, but what if they're twins? Well, they might have the same date of birth, but they're definitely not going to have the same first name. So it really is very, very unlikely you're going to have two residents at the same time in the same home with exactly the same name and date of birth. That would be pretty impressive to see. So this one's a pretty straightforward one. Remember, you can forward-date to allow data transfer pre-admission, but it's very unlikely you're going to get any duplicate records. Again, you can remove records from person-centered software if you've made an error. You've already put them in without thinking. Sort of typed it directly into PCS. But realistically, you just want the process to be adopted that any new staff members, any new residents, they'll come through admin and be automatically put into PCS, saving 4 to 6 minutes of administration time per entry by this sort of removing this duplication method of putting staff into two systems. You only put it into one and it appears in the other. It's a great time saver, and the process just needs to be adopted to make sure that everybody knows they go into CoolCare first and then turn up in PCS second. So what about support? Well, within the product, person-centered software has a number of different tools to help you get help. Clicking on the little button at the top there, it opens up a little chat box, and then you can use the tech support online chat, or you can phone them on their phone number, pressing option 1. Same exactly applies to CoolCare. We've got a little chat box, which is a little kind of like blue circle down the bottom. Pops open a little box which you can type in. It's manned by our support team. It's a live chat. It's not a bot. It's actually real people see the questions you're asking, and they will respond to it. You can also phone us. On that case, it's option 2, or you can email us at support@coolcare4.co.uk. We're here to help. And we're really here to make sure you're getting the most out of both systems for the benefit of your business and to save you time and effort. That's the end of our little video on the integration of CoolCare with person-centered software. As you know, CoolCare is all about making operating your care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable. And hopefully from this video, you can see how the integration with PCS will go a long way to helping you save administration time, ultimately save money, and just make life ever so slightly easier for each and every member of your team.